Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, you were there. You were in the building for Game 1, Rangers Hurricanes, and I know the score was 4-3. They looked really good.
I said that might be the single best playoff game I've ever seen the Rangers play, and they've blown some teams out. They've had a lot more lopsided final scores, but in terms of intensity, in terms of energy, in terms of the feel of the game, you go and look at the underlying numbers from this game, and they bear out the fact there wasn't a whole lot going on offensively for either of these teams. Carolina, a decisive advantage of 5-on-5, as we expected. The special teams came into play. But defensively, my big concern was, would the Rangers be able to both withstand Carolina's pressure? Would they be able to keep up with Carolina? Because Carolina definitely a faster team. And as far as style and as far as tempo, the Rangers were right there with them. They won a lot of 50-50 pucks. They had a lot more rush opportunities than I thought they might have had in this series, especially being that I'm pretty strong. I'm pretty fond of the group Carolina has on their back end. I thought coming into this series, that would be an advantage Carolina would have, is that they both have the talent and the structure to fall back on to play good defense. And instead, the Rangers did a really nice job of pressuring Carolina, forcing Carolina to play defense. I thought, once again, the Wenberg line was outstanding at buying them 35, 40 seconds of zone time to just wear them down. Even if it didn't lead to anything particularly dangerous, you keep doing that for 35, 40 seconds a minute every couple shifts, you start to tilt the game in your favor. And it was really important that the Rangers scored first in this game. I know Carolina came back right and scored within a minute and a half of the Rangers
One of the
scoring.
strangest goals you'll ever see.
Yeah, it was a really clunky play. I thought it got deflected at the net front, and apparently it didn't. When I went back and watched the replay, they never adjusted the scoring, so it seems like that goal stood as it was. But
try scoring that again. Just try it. It will never happen.
That's part of
that's an
the issue.
insane goal.
That's part of the reason everybody's a little skeptical of Carolina when it comes to the playoffs, is they need those types of goals that are relying on screens, on tips, on rebounds, deflections, etc., because that they don't have the high-end finishing talent. But the one last thing I wanted to say before I threw it back over to you was, they felt in that game from the moment the puck dropped, it felt okay. We're here. We look okay. We're not finding our legs. You can tell they had some time to prepare for Carolina. They looked really good as far as maintaining their structure and keeping Carolina to the outside. And it's really important that the Rangers score first in these games. And this is going to sound stupid, but a lot of people paid a lot of money to be at that game yesterday. The Rangers go down 1-0 5 minutes into that game. That building sounds like a library because every single person who's in there spent $500 to $600 just to get in. And they're having the very real and daunting realization that I spent $500 to watch my favorite team lose a playoff game. I want to kill myself. So the Rangers scoring first when they are the home team does matter because it keeps the crowd in it. The crowd was really lively yesterday. Definitely one of the livelier crowds I've been a part of at a Ranger game, especially in the playoffs. I've been to some big playoff games, but there was a real energy about the team, the way they played, that carried through to everybody. I mean, there's not really anybody you point at on the Rangers and say, he didn't have a great game yesterday. He wasn't good. There was no one amazing, but there was no one terrible. The Rangers, there was no dead weight. Like, sure, you say Rempe, bad penalty, only played 7 minutes, whatever. He was fine in the minutes he played. The Rangers did not, all of the concerns you had going into the series, they didn't manifest yesterday. The Rangers looked ready for the moment. I think, again, a great reflection on the coaching staff, how well they've been prepared. And now it's simply a matter of, okay, you can do it. Can you do it 3 more times?
I want to touch on Rempe really quickly because I tweeted this out during the game that it's like, this is not his fault, but Matt Rempe probably should sit the rest of the playoffs because that penalty was not a penalty. He got a penalty for being tall. And because he's tall, now he has a reputation of getting things called against him when he doesn't do things that are penalties. That goalie interference penalty that he took wasn't goalie interference. But because he's tall and because he's Matt Rempe, he got the call, which it's unfair to him. Like, listen, some of the things that he's done warrant his reputation to a certain extent. I'm not denying that. But just because he's big and he's done that in the past doesn't necessarily mean that everything he's done to that point is a penalty. You, it's to a certain extent, I think it's unfair to Rempe, but if every
He's
time
getting
he's
officiated differently.
if every
It's just a
time
simple
he's
matter of
out
fact.
there, the refs are essentially trying to find a way to get him off the ice, then there's no reason he should be playing. And again, I want to reiterate, it's not fair to Matt Rempe that that's happening, but it is happening. So he only played 7 minutes for a myriad of different reasons. But again, we talked about this with the Stu Bickle thing. It's like if you are playing one of your guys 7 minutes in a tight game, maybe bring somebody else in there. And again, it's not fair to Matt Rempe, but it is what it is. But overall, I want to highlight Mika Zibanejad. We've talked about his struggles all season.
You're the one who's been banging this drum. I've long said I have no qualms about. I feel he's over selective. He overpasses, but he's not playing poorly. He did what he needed to do.
Listen, when your top line center goes 30 games
He's
out of
not
5
their
on
top
5
line
goals,
center, though. That's the
the
thing.
second line.
Trocheck
I
is
mean,
their
even
first
then,
line center.
when one of your top 6 players goes 30 games out of 5 on 5 goal, it's worrying. But one of the things that I highlighted, you highlighted as well, is you'd much rather have that happen in January or February or whenever it was than it happened in May and in June. And it is so awesome, really genuinely awesome, to see Mika Zibanejad play this well. This is he's probably been one of, if not their best forward. It's really it's just great to see. He had 2 goals in the first period. He was 6 inches away from a hat trick if Brent Burns didn't swipe the puck away at the goal line in the last second. He was spectacular against Washington. He was awesome in that first game against Carolina. This is the best of Mika Zibanejad that we've seen, and it is just such not only, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air to a certain extent, but like it is just so great to see Mika Zibanejad at his peak, because we've highlighted the issues and all these things, but at the end of the day, the issues are all erased if come game 1 of the playoffs you show up at a different level than your struggles have placed you games 1 through 82. And through 5 games of the playoffs, when the lights are the brightest, the stakes are the highest, etc., Mika Zibanejad has played incredibly well, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the type of player, Zibanejad in particular, I would say K'Andre Miller as well. They need their game to be going well, and then it really translates for them. They are both, I don't want to say emotional players, but they are confidence players where based on how they're feeling about their game, you can get vastly different types of outcomes from them. And when you got the power play humming like that, it's really something incredible. One of the things I was really worried about in this series was, would the Rangers be able to get the puck to the middle? Would they be able to get the puck down low and force Carolina to open up to some extent? And on some of the goals yesterday, I don't know what the hell Carolina was doing defensively. And that's a real positive reflection on the Rangers, that they were able to get Carolina that out of sorts. On the one goal where it's a pass from behind the net front and Teravainen's just looking the other way, like the puck's not coming from behind the net, and it's a walk-in goal. You talk about that. And Freddie Anderson gave you a gift. The Panarin goal shouldn't happen but
Sure.
When things are going well, you tend to get bounces. That's what we talked about a lot in the month of December of this season, where the Rangers weren't playing great, but they kept finding ways to win. Was they were playing with a lot of confidence. Their star players, other than Zibanejad and Shesterkin, were really carrying a heavy part of the load, and were doing a good job of doing it. And you build this energy, this confidence over the course of a season, and you play a team that fundamentally is faster than you, probably more physical than you, and has a deeper team than you. And you played them to the point where Carolina was out of sorts yesterday. That was not a typical Hurricanes performance. Their penalty kill was not particularly good. Their defense was not particularly good. Yeah, some of their guys had some chances. Svechnikov in particular had a nice game.
Couple posts as well.
Yeah, that too. Both teams, couple posts. That was very, it got very weird right there out of the gate when you had the 2 goals, you had the Shea post within the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game. And I remember looking around, seeing a lot of nervous faces, a lot of people anxiously tapping their foot. I was one of them, and feeling, okay, it's going to be up and down. There's going to be lots of chances. And I didn't feel like that would benefit the Rangers. I felt if the Rangers were going to do well in this series, it would be a lot of low scoring games. It would be their defense. It would be their goaltending. I thought Shesterkin was really good yesterday. The 1 5-hole goal on Nietzsche, he probably would like back. But other than that, the 2 other goals, he doesn't really have a chance on. Shesterkin was really good when he needed to be. Carolina didn't get a lot offensively. They didn't really get to the net front at 5-on-5. They didn't create a lot of dangerous looks, and that bodes well for the Rangers in terms of the style battle here. Carolina is going to take those shots from everywhere. The Rangers did a really good job of absorbing pressure and then springing the counterattack when they were able to. The Roslovic pass that sets up the goal is pure rush. That's him skating in a straight line, going around behind the net, drawing defenders to him, and it's wide open in front. That's the type of play I didn't think would be there. And again, this will be a back and forth. Carolina will respond. Carolina will make adjustments. It's on the Rangers to make more adjustments. So with those with that in mind, you feel reasonably good about your worries, because that's what I was more worried than I was confident going into the game yesterday, just because that's the nature of Rangers playoff hockey, especially when you're playing a team like Carolina, who historically has done a really good job possession wise. And that's kind of something the Rangers have struggled with in playoff series. You go back and look at some of those box scores during the Lundqvist era where he's got 80 saves, 80, the other team has 80 scoring chances in a game, and the Rangers have 38, and they somehow win 2-1. They go 0 for 6 on the power play, and they still win the game. There were a lot of those. There was that one stretch in 2014 where I want to say they won 14 straight games, 2-1 or 3 by 1 goal. That's a hard way to live. The way they played yesterday, that's a lot more sustainable. That is a lot more repeatable. And the final score, again, as you mentioned, not as reflective of the game. And I would say the underlying numbers as well, being that the Rangers were up 2 goals for a good chunk of the game. Carolina's going to be more aggressive. I would have liked the Rangers to be a little bit more aggressive, trying to find one more goal to win the game. But you can't really, there's not a lot here to complain about. They played really well.
It's such a refreshing thing to watch, because you think about the way the Rangers have played previously to this entire season, where they would get outshot 2-1, outscoring chance 2-1. The majority of the game would be in the Rangers zone, but somehow, some way, they would be very opportunistic in their opportunities and somehow win the game 3-2, because their goalie, whoever it would just be standing on his head, and then they would somehow miraculously win the game. That game on Sunday was for pretty much the opposite of that, where the Rangers, it felt good watching this team play. You were never towards the end they got a little weird for sure. It's a playoff game, so everybody's nervous all of the time anyway. But the play was so drastically different comparatively to what we've seen in previous years, where it wasn't Hurricanes are going to control the puck in the offensive zone for 46 minutes. Rangers have it in that Hurricane zone for 7, but somehow, some way, Rangers find a way to win. That was not how that game went. That game looked so much more of, we don't care who we're playing. Oh, we're playing Carolina? Great. We're going to control the entries. We're going to control the way the puck is flowing throughout all 3 zones of the ice. This is our game. This is going to be our series, and we're going to play like it. This was a confident team, both defensively. The sticks were in the right place. They were making the right reads on all ends of the ice. This was a team that was so well prepared for the moment that it translated so well on the ice. Now, again, couple posts for the Hurricanes. I think Lafreniere had one off the crossbar. Those go in. It's a different ending, etc. But for the most part, yeah, the score was 4-3, and it's still a close game. But the way they played was so different than what we've seen in years past, that this is a new level that this team hasn't reached in the playoffs in a long time. And I'm not gonna jinx any. Like, it just feels good. It feels good to be a fan of this team right now because of how they played. They're not winning by the skin of their teeth and just hanging on to one goal leads like they have been in the past. This is a team that is confident and will step on your throat if you let them to, and it is really exciting to watch.
You felt like you saw the vision coming together yesterday. That's what that felt to me. That felt like the best possible scenario and the close to the best possible version of the Rangers as they're constructed. And as we'll discuss, they do have some options now. Whether or not Heedle's going to play, whether or not Brodzinski's going to draw in for Rempe, maybe Blake Wheeler. I saw he was practicing earlier today, even if
No
it was
contact
non-con.
yet,
Not,
though.
I,
So he's
yeah,
if
he's a ways away.
if he even gets close, it's not going to be for a while.
Yeah, they're at a point now where they have some options. They've played reasonably well, and it's not. There are obviously things you want to work on and improve on, but it's not like they were glaring systemic breakdowns yesterday that led to these Carolina goals. We're talking about two very weird bounces. We're talking about a 6-on-5 situation at the end of a game, and yeah, you want to do better. You don't want to concede goals down. You do not want to concede goals down the backstretch of a game when the other
Sure.
team is trying to build momentum. But there's not like a glaring, oh, we were getting killed on entries or we were getting killed on exits. They played, I don't want to say a perfect game, but based on the environment, the game situation, they played pretty close to perfectly. And they are a team that if they play with that confidence and they get off to a good start, it really snowballs because they looked great. Even though Carolina scored and got it back to 1-1 pretty quickly, you never really had that crazy Carolina push that I kind of expected was coming. The Rangers were able to withstand a decent amount of pressure, and their ability to make things happen off of the rush, and even if it doesn't lead to a scoring chance, the opportunity to just get out of your own zone quickly, put pressure on the other team, force them to defend. I thought Orlov, they kind of did a good job of targeting him. I thought they did a good job of targeting D'Angelo, where when they get the puck, you got a forecheck, and that is something we assumed would be a strength for Carolina in this series. Carolina is probably the best forechecking team in the entire NHL because of the way they play, because of the style that Rod Brindamore coaches. They are really intense on the puck. And the Rangers, especially on the kill in these playoffs, have done a masterful job of forcing guys into bad mistakes. And we talked about this last week, and we'll talk about it again now. Them having three different centers they can send out there on the penalty kill, and and upwards of 5-6 wingers they can alternate between two out there, it gives you a lot more options. It keeps your penalty kill fresh, and it allows you to play at that high intensity. If you only have 2-3 forward pairs you can do for that, it's a little bit more grueling to ask them to play such a high pressure, such a high stakes game. I remember during the game yesterday, my friend who I was at the game with was talking about the Rangers playing like a Liverpool Man City style soccer press because their line was at the blue line on these entries, where generally in the years past, the Rangers have
Blown over my head. I don't.
a high line. They're playing a high line. So instead of the Rangers historically, when they've been on the kill, have dropped back deep and invited the other team to skate inwards in the hopes of getting them to the outside. Playing such a high line defensively forces them to make a decision faster, and it's hard to do because if you're doing that defensively, you have less margin for error because you're playing so high up. If they get behind you, kind of like what happened on the Nature's goal, they're going to be in on net. But because they're fresher, because they can stay out there, because they have multiple groups that can stay out there and play at a reasonably high level, they are able to put a lot more pressure on teams on the power who are on the power play than most penalty kills. Those are the two schools of thought. Do you want to be high pressure, try and create offense off of your penalty kill, or do you want to be a little bit more passive and try and absorb the pressure? The Rangers having the depth they do on the penalty kill allows them to be a bit more aggressive. And I will say, I felt Gaudreau had a pretty solid game yesterday. I felt Trouba had a pretty solid game yesterday. And the style of game was suited for what they did, was suited for their skill sets. Lots of block shots, lots of sticks in lanes. They're not winning a lot of foot races, and they're not the most dangerous players offensively, But that type of game is well suited to the guys who are physical and block shots. They had strong games. I felt Miller Schneider had a solid enough job. They drew the tougher matchups. They were out there against Aho a lot yesterday. And again, the Rangers didn't concede a whole lot. You go look at the shot maps where the scoring chances come from. Carolina wasn't really getting around the net.
It's really telling that the game was 4-3, but I will say none of the 3 goals were because of glaring defensive breakdowns. The first goal you couldn't replicate if you tried for an hour. Like I can't like how are we like that? That's just freak goal. Whatever happens, all good. The third goal, 6-on-5. In craziness. What are you gonna do? The second goal was, I think it was like the Rangers were changing, and the Hurricane just had a perfect, just a C, just open up for them, and Nate just got in and scored. Would you like Shesterkin to stop that? Sure, he almost did. Whatever, it's not the end of the world. They won the game anyway. So you take a look at all those 3 goals, and if only one of them you could point to and say, hey, maybe we could do something differently there. You take that every day of the week. Every day of the week you take that. You give up 3 goals. 2 of them were off of either crazy caroms or a 6-on-5 where Carolina is just throwing the kitchen sink at Shesterkin and just to try to get one past him. Okay, fine. One goal that you can point to and say, hey, maybe we should adjust the way that we do this next time against the Carolina Hurricanes, which, by all accounts are one of the best teams in the league. 100% of the day you take that and you run with it twice on Sundays. You want games like this every single day of the week. This is, it'd be one thing if they scored 3 goals and the score was the same and the Rangers would win, but all 3 goals are off of breakdowns because those can be exploited. The Carolina Hurricanes cannot exploit a shot from the point going off of Lafreniere's stick and bouncing off the ice and going top shelf. There is no way to repeat that. That's not a repeatable thing to exploit. Whereas the Rangers have found ways to exploit the Hurricanes. Their penalty kill yesterday was a disaster fire. The Rangers scored 2 goals in like 24 seconds. It was masterclass from the Rangers power play. They exploited the Hurricanes' defensive issues on the first goal, and they exploited, I guess, Anderson's 5-hole on the 4th goal. Those methods of scoring are repeatable. And that's one of the most dangerous things about this Rangers team right now is they're firing on all cylinders offensively, and the things that they're doing, they can recreate essentially whenever they want. The Hurricanes, by the way, maybe that second breakaway goal, maybe if you find the perfect seam on a perfect pass in the midst of a change, maybe I guess you can replicate that. But the other 2 goals, they were just caused by mayhem and luck. Like, you can't replicate nonsense.
Completely agree with you in that respect. And building off of that, now we can start gaming this out and talking about the scenarios because you're up 1-0. You've played reasonably well. You have shown the ability to, at least for one game, match Carolina's tempo and intensity. Whether or not they're able to do that over the course of an entire series, they might not be as fresh and as lively because they are not coming off of, several days off going into a game. But we can't worry about that till we get there. But stylistically, you've got 6 games. You've got a possible 6 games remaining. You need to win 3 of those games. That is feasible. That is not that difficult, all things considered, based on some of the circumstances the Rangers have found themselves in. Gaming it out, if this series continues at this pace, I do think that that will eventually favor Carolina because they have shown the ability to play at this level for basically the entirety of the Brind'Amour tenure, and the Rangers will have to find ways to mitigate that. And they did a good job of that yesterday, falling back on their structure, relying on their fundamentals as a team. And that is how you beat a team that is faster than you, that might be deeper than you, is You fall back on your structure. You have that safeguard in there where mentally you know what you need to do with the puck. You understand your job, and you don't put your teammates in a bad spot. There weren't those blind turnovers in the neutral zone. There weren't those cross team passes that got broken up. I will say I did think it was hilarious that Zibanejad passed on that wide open net on the odd man rush where, yeah, Trocheck was wide open, and if he hits Trocheck, it's the easiest of tap-ins that one of us could have put in. But at the same time, if Zibanejad just puts that on the net, that's probably the hat trick, and they win the game running away. It's funny. It's funny.
It's really
because
funny.
They won. We can poke fun and say it's funny. If they lost, we'd all be irate.
I didn't want to point that out. I didn't want to highlight
it's funny.
I didn't want to highlight the breakaway that he had where he's like, "Oh, I'll pass it back. Oh, good. What could possibly go wrong?" It's one of those things where it's like, especially me on the show have been I've been pretty critical of Zibanejad throughout the season. So the one, I tweeted this out during the game. I was like, this is so great that Zibanejad is doing all these things. And then right after I tweet that, he does the drop pass, and I wanted to scream. But it's
because
funny.
They won. It's fun.
It's funny. It's because they won the game. I got nothing to say.
Because they won, it's funny, and that's what. Yeah. That is an afforded luxury we as Ranger fans have not had in playoff series. We have not had the opportunity to say, "Oh, it's okay, they didn't score. They scored enough anyway." The amount of times I would have cut a finger off of my own hand to just have one of those Carl Hagelin breakaways go in the fucking net at some point in my life, or those Chris Kreider breakaways to hit the net as opposed to the glass. The Rangers can score with the best of them now. The power play being as potent as it is, especially against a good defensive team, Carolina,
especially that first play.
Oh, the first play is beautiful.
Oh boy,
the opportunities they have because they have a coach who's actually managed to teach them how to take faceoffs at a high level. They have a lot more options. They have a lot more wrinkles. When you have the opportunities to win these faceoffs and run set plays, you have a lot more looks. And that's what makes this power play so dangerous at times, is the fact that it is not just setting up the Zibanejad one-timer. It is not just looking for the Kreider tip. Because they have the set plays off of faceoffs, they have a lot more looks they give other teams. And that's how you stay dangerous. That's how Edmonton is so good at this. That's how Tampa Bay is so good at this, is they don't run their power plays through the traditional point guy at the top, like the Rangers kind of do with Fox, but Panarin will take that spot at times too. Edmonton and Tampa Bay, they have their best player just kind of holding the puck and moving the offense around him, kind of similar to basketball style spacing. And off of faceoffs, the Rangers have that luxury where if Trocheck ties, they can come across the middle and get the shot there. They can do the play where it's a tie, they cycle, and because they cycle the other side, the guy is entirely unmarked because everybody on Carolina is going to compress to try and get to the puck. They have so many more looks on their power play. And don't get me wrong, they've had good power plays the last few years, but it just feels different this year because they have that afforded luxury of winning so many more faceoffs. And this is something I've said more than once on the show, and I'll repeat it now. This is just talking into the void. It would be great if we could get better faceoff statistics. Like, this isn't exactly revolutionary news, but I would like it to be broken down into tie-ups versus clean wins versus offensive zone versus defensive zone, because faceoffs at large don't have a huge impact on possession, but winning the faceoffs the way the Rangers do with control, that opens up so much more for them offensively. And same thing defensively. You had mentioned that Rempe didn't play a lot yesterday. It's great that they get a second center out there with Gaudreau and Vesey, whether it's Wenberg, whether it's Trocheck, whether it's Zibanejad. Hell, yesterday, sometimes it was Panarin out there with them. It didn't really matter. It's just when you have these options, it gives you more paths forward. This is not, we're holding on and we're going to hope Shesterkin can make 50 saves. We're not hoping for that one power play goal to bail us out and to keep us in this game. They have a lot of ways to beat you. And that hasn't been the case for a lot of Ranger teams. And the depth is real. That Kakko, Vesey, and Cooley line yesterday, they were great. They played exactly how Carolina wants to play, and they beat them at their own game. They were the one Rangers line that finished with decent underlying numbers because they're perfectly content to wear you down and cycle you. And as the series goes along, I'll be curious to see how these matchups play out. But I found it interesting that Laviolette was matching the Panarin line against the Aho line, because in theory you would want to try and get them away from them. You would want them to be out there against, like Nosin, or maybe against the Jarvis line or the Natchez line. But by putting fire against fire and forcing Carolina's best offensive players to play defense, you had a discernible advantage. Force Jake Gensel and Sebastian Aho to play defense, as opposed to giving them, if they're playing against Kakko, Cooley, Wenberg, or against Zibanejad, Kreider, they're probably going to win the possession battle there. But by putting your best offensive players out there against their best offensive players and having it be a straight-on mano-y-mano, that is how the Rangers have beaten Carolina in the past. In 2022, it was because Zibanejad went crazy those final two games, Game 6 and Game 7, and they did not have Aho to be able to make plays because Zibanejad was better. That was the case yesterday. You put Panarin head-to-head against Aho and Gensel, Panarin won those minutes yesterday, and that's going to be interesting to see how those matchups continue throughout the series. I'll be very curious to see how the Rangers manage their defensive assignments in terms of which pair they like against which forward groups, but that's as close to as we talk a lot about how hockey coaches don't really have a huge impact in the game itself, that a lot of the change hockey coaches make comes in practice, and that's their impact. I felt that was as close to a perfect job as you could do in terms of managing your bench, having a good feel for things, and really playing your matchups well. And you can tell how well the Rangers are prepared for these games. I was talking about it with somebody this morning who was texting me. I was texting back and forth with. They have a real coach for the first time in a playoff series. This is not going to be, It's my way or the highway, whether we're talking Vigneault sending out Nick Holden and Mark Stahl in the Ottawa series over and over again. It's not going to be Gallant just throwing the lines in a blender every 3 minutes, trying to find something to get going. They have a real coach who has them ready for this moment, and they genuinely believe they can do this, as opposed to in years past where it kind of felt like, we can do this. Whereas now it's, no, we can do this. We can play with these guys. We can play them the way they want to play, and we can still beat them. Now it's a matter of keeping this intensity up and enduring the ups and downs of this series. The Rangers have been very lucky injuries-wise so far in the playoffs. You look at some of these other teams, Carolina included, no Pesce, at least for Game 1 yesterday, and probably not tomorrow. From what I remember, I saw he didn't even come to New York, so the earliest he's going to play is Game 3. You got to keep winning these games. The longer these series go on, the more volatility there is. If you're the Rangers, you feel really good right now, but come tomorrow, it's over with. You can't just expect to do what you did yesterday and it to work again.
And real quick on Pesce, I kind of don't think we'll see him until at least Game 4, and the reason why I say that is if he was really close to coming back, he'd be in New York. If he's not even in New York for the first two games, I kind of don't think they'll force him in the lineup in Game 3, which bodes well for the Rangers. They'll have to keep facing Tony DeAngelo. Oh no, I'm so scared about Tony DeAngelo. But one more thing about the power play. One of the things that separates a good power play or a bad power play from one of the best power plays in the league is unpredictability. You can have all the best talent in the world, but when you're so predictable that other teams can sniff you out from 30 miles away, it's not a good power play. And we saw that in Pittsburgh for the entire season. You have Crosby and Malkin and when Gensel was still there, and Letang and Carlson, and their power play was awful because they were so predictable. They didn't know what to do with the puck half the time. It was just a janky, clunky power play that never really got going. The one of the biggest strengths of the Rangers power play is not only do they know what to do, they thrive in making the other team uncomfortable. Sure, we can have Fox patrol the blue line with the puck and try to get the one-timer to Panarin or Zibanejad or whatever. Sure, we can have Fox take it into the corner or take it in deep, and then there's Kreider and there's Zibanejad in front of the net to create some kind of play like they did on that first power play goal. There's so many different ways that this power play can score that it's really difficult to prepare for that, because you have, we've watched the scattering report. Here's 48 different ways the Rangers have scored in the power play this year. I'm just making this up. 48 different ways the Rangers have scored on the power play this season. Oh, okay, well, they just went and scored way number 49. Well, what are we supposed to do about that? That is such a crucial aspect of special teams that it just adds another wrinkle to the mind games. Because at a certain point, when your power play is running like that, the other team is like, okay, first of all, we have to be extra careful. Now the Rangers, it's one game, and I don't want to say this like too specifically, but like, in an ethereal sense, when your power play is going this well, you get in the other team's heads of like, okay, well, one, we have to be extra careful because if we take a penalty, they're going to score a goal. Two, if we do take a penalty, how are we going to defend the 11 different ways they can pass and create an offensive chance and score? And three, okay, well, if they score, we have to now put even more pressure on in the offensive end, in the offensive zone to respond. Okay, well, that's not going well because they're stifling all of our opportunities to score. Well, now what? Right? So you get into their heads. Now, it's one game. I'm sure the Rangers aren't in Carolina's heads. But that is the method to winning a lot of the chess battles, a lot of the one-on-ones, because you don't win chess in one move. It takes a lot of different step-by-step processes to get to checkmate. And if the Rangers are operating this well with these many moves, the Rangers are going to get a checkmate sooner rather than later.
Definitely agree with you there. Let's bounce around the other series real quick before we get out of here. It was good to see Dallas show you why everybody believes in them. I don't think there's another team in the playoffs, maybe Colorado, that could have come back from 2-0 down against Vegas the way they did. Wyatt Johnston's a guy, man.
Really good.
So
good.
I've been a really big proponent of his game because he just doesn't ever stop moving his feet. He is one of the most active players I've ever seen at this level, where he is just constantly making things happen. Them against Colorado, there's a real argument. That should probably be the conference final. Hell, that could be the two best teams in the entire league going at it in that second round series. That should be awesome. Edmonton, Vancouver will be interesting. I think the narratives in that series are going to be more compelling than the hockey, frankly, because we're down to a third goalie. We're talking about an Edmonton team that's looking down the burden of expectations of having McDavid and Draisaitl playing so well at the same time against an Edmonton team that's just kind of happy to be here. And
Vancouver team.
That's what I meant. Yeah. The Vancouver team.
All of the pressure's on Edmonton.
100%.
Vancouver's happy to, they've had a good season, but they don't have the pressure of, okay, well, you have to win the cup now. Like this has been a good season for them. They don't have the pressure of cup or bust.
And they honestly had an excuse.
Kind of does.
They had an excuse if they lost in round one, saying, well, we were down to our third goalie. And Nashville played really well in that series and gave them a real fight that I was not surprised. I felt Nashville would play well there. I think Florida's going to kill Boston. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think that it'd be very funny if Boston did the inverse of last year, where nobody's giving them a chance against the Panthers, the way none of us gave Florida a chance last year, and the Bruins pulled one out of their ass and ended up in the conference final with maybe the least impressive team that's remaining in the entire playoffs. The Bruins really, I know the Leafs came back from 3-1 down to force a game 7. The Bruins did themselves no favors. They didn't look particularly good. If Jeremy Swayman wasn't as good as he was, there's a real argument the Leafs probably win that series in 5 or 6 games, even as injured as they were and as poorly as they played early in that series.
I was talking to a Boston fan about this last night, and they mentioned that Ullmark should start game 1 because of the continuing rotation of goalies. I don't agree with that. Swayman played so incredibly well.
I think you ride the hot goalie till he gives you a reason to take him out. I think that's how you got to manage that.
I understand the thought process of the goalie rotation in Boston. I get why they did it. I understand all of that. Jeremy Swayman was sensational. I feel like is not even describing how good he was in that series. He was the MVP of both teams by a mile and a half. He was so good. I just don't see how you go back to Ullmark after how well Swayman has played. Now, if Swayman doesn't have a good game 1 and you want to switch it up and you want to go back to the rotation, that makes a lot more sense. But game 1 has to be Swayman. Has to be.
Based on how he's played, I think you only change the goalie if you have a reason to change the goalie. Like if you're down in a series and you feel confident about your backup in that, or in Boston's case, you have a true tandem and you want to try and spark the team, get them going, then it makes sense. But
Well,
until Swayman gives
my
you a
question to
reason,
you, and I hate I don't mean
yeah,
to cut you
go,
off, but a question to you is the Bruins tried to trade Olmark at the deadline.
yeah.
Olmark said no because he didn't want to go to L.A. West Coast. I think he said something about his family being in Europe and they want to watch the games. He wants to be on the East Coast. I get all that. But do you think the Bruins regret that trade didn't go through?
No, I think based on the way their team is constructed, and I think they genuinely, for the regular season, need both of them. And that's not a knock on Swayman. It's just going from starting every other game to getting 75% of the starts. We've seen that, the impact that has on a younger goalie. You look at Jake Ottinger, you look at Stuart Skinner, guys who have had really strong amateur backgrounds, whether it's at college or the U.S. National Development Team program. But once you increase that workload, they hit a physical wall, and it's not an indictment of their talent. It is a massive jump up in
Sure.
expectation and responsibility. You know, in college, you play twice a week in the college hockey season, and you go to playing 3 games in 5 days as a starting goalie in the league. That's difficult. But I think they will end up trading Olmark to try and add more pieces to this team and try and transition it towards the Pasta, McAvoy, Swayman group as opposed to the Marchand and Charlie Coyle, the guys who are I don't want to say they're on their way out, but on the older end of the scale. That's a good problem to have 2 goalies you can, and you trust both. You feel good about both of them. I know Olmark wasn't great when he played in the Leafs series, but it wasn't his fault, the games they lost that he
Yep.
started. So I think that's an interesting one. I think realistically, well, I think Colorado Dallas has potential to be one of the best playoff series we've ever
Banger.
seen. I can't
Banger.
wait. There's as much high end talent in that series as you probably can see. That was the one thing. I had more than one friend who's a casual hockey fan text me watching Vegas Dallas and go, I understand what you're talking about now, where
Yeah.
there are some teams who just play at a different level. And we're talking about that series. 2 goals was the goal differential
Yeah.
for a 7 game series, about as close as a series can be. It was the guys lower in the lineup that were making plays. Vegas going back and forth between Thompson and Aiden Hill. Lots to tug on there. Vegas is in an interesting spot. The roster surgery they're going to do this summer should be interesting. But all of these series, other than Boston, Florida, have real potential to be exciting. And that's not me saying I don't think it can be. It's just I struggle to see how a Boston team that could barely score against the Leafs is going to score enough goals to beat the Panthers.
The only way I would see that, and real quick, like I saw people and I interacted with people that I would never call hockey fans in my life, and then I would see them reacting to Leafs Bruins game 7.
Yeah.
That was like that's really cool for the
Everybody knows.
sport, for everything. It's like, these people don't watch, they don't care, they don't know who's play, like, they don't know the names on the back of anybody's jersey, but they are watching game 7 because they want to. Like that's really cool for the sport. And the thing about the Bruins Panthers series, I think the Bruins can formulate their own agenda of, hey, this team beat us last year when we had 65 wins and nobody gave Florida a chance. We blew a 3-1 series lead. Now no one expects us to win, so we have no pressure. Florida has all the pressure. All they need is Bobrovsky to have a bad 2 weeks. And anything
Yeah.
is possible. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying there's a strong possibility of it happening. But as we always talk about with Bobrovsky, he's been known to have these not so great stretches, and all it takes is 2 weeks, and Florida's out, and they're looking around saying, "Well, what the hell just happened?"
That's the magic of playoff hockey. You don't even need to be good, and you can have a good 2 weeks, and you can change
Yeah,
the direction of your franchise and your life. I mean, I'll bring up Cam Ward over every single time we have this conversation. Cam Ward got an entire 15-year NHL career out of one good playoff run, and he was basically only above average 2 of the 14 seasons he was in the league. But you win that one cup, it doesn't matter. There are guys who will make. Look at Binnington, same exact deal. Binnington was
Binnington
good
was
this
really good this year, though.
Yeah,
To
in
be
the
fair,
regular season, he was good this year.
yeah,
But prior to that, the 3 years since they won the Stanley Cup, he had not been an
No.
above average goalie. So anything can happen in the playoffs. That's what makes it special. Swayman can absolutely outplay Bobrovsky, and that series could be a lot closer, a lot uglier. Marchand Marchand and Kachuk, entertaining. There will be some entertaining moments in that series. Wrapping up on Rangers Hurricanes here. You feel really good as a Ranger fan based on how that game
Yes.
went yesterday. And most importantly, you still feel like there's a little bit left. You still feel like there's a little bit more toothpaste in there you can squeeze out of this group, because they have the luxury of having only played 4 games in the first round. They have the luxury of a coach who actually knows what he's doing in preparation and getting them ready to be prepared, because you could not go from 2 more starkly different styles of play than going from the Capitals plodding slow to Carolina's heavy metal forecheck. And the Rangers were ready. The Rangers did not wilter. They didn't fold. They met the moment and controlled stretches of play and were able to use their high-end skill to really dictate how this game went. And you have to feel that they may not end up winning this series, but they absolutely are not going to be in a position where it's hold on for dear life the way we kind of thought it was coming in.
The Andy quote from The Office of, how do you know when you're in the good times?
That's your most millennial trait, is that you always reference The Office.
I mean, it's just that, it's pretty much just that one quote, because it's like we as Rangers fans have watched this team struggle in situations like this and find a way to win because the goalie, whoever it was, just played so well that it didn't matter what the other team did. We've gone through games and series and year after year of the Rangers being outscored, outchanced, but they just somehow miraculously win 2-1. And this is the good times right now, where the Rangers have a head coach and the entire system behind the bench that has this team so well prepared. They're playing really well. They're 5-0 in the playoffs. Like, that is not a statement.
First time it's happened since what year, Andrew?
Yeah. Well, it has to be. The old has to be 94, right? Surely. Add that. I'm gonna take a big huff of the cigarette here, but add that to the list. But this team looks really good. They're playing really well, and they feel really good. And it is a breath of fresh air to be a fan of a team that is taking positive strides as big as this. There's a long way to go. They've only won 5 of the necessary 16 games. Don't want to let's not get too ahead of ourselves here, but the start is essentially immaculate. Like, you can nitpick and you can really, drive yourself crazy by looking at every little thing that went wrong, but they are 5-0, and they're not 5-0 by accident. They've dominated all 5 of these games, and it has been phenomenal to watch.
They have shown they can get to the capacity of playing at the highest level. That is the most encouraging thing about this playoff run. This is not the Rangers of old, in the sense that those teams were good. They were able to endure. They were often outlasted opponents as opposed to beating opponents into a pulp. This team is capable of doing both, where they can get to playing at that really high level. And because they have so much depth, you feel that they can withstand a 7-game series against a good team like Carolina. And because they handled their business so promptly in round 1, they won't be absolutely shocked by the time they get to a conference final. And again, I'll say this one last time, and then we'll get out of here. It still feels like they can play a little bit better. And that's why you got to feel that they are trending in that upward direction where you want to be as the playoffs go along, because the further you go along, the better your opponents, the better you're going to need to play. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Liberty Blue Podcast. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Leave the show a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you are watching over on YouTube, hi, hello, those are our faces. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the alarm bell anytime a new video, so you get a notification anytime a new video goes live. Pick the 4 playoff series in the second round down in the comments. Let us know who you think is going to advance and be playing in the conference finals.